Beige message. The notebook my mother bought me had no cute characters on it, nor was it bright pink, but rather a plain beige cover that looked like something you might find at a Muji store. It wasn't that I wanted it, but it seemed to be a parent's way of telling me that it was time for me to get into the habit of planning my life, and I thought to myself, well, it's true that I haven't studied at all even though it's before the entrance exam. I probably won't do it. Well, it's free if I just write it down. What should I write in my notebook in the first place? I am a 9th grader, and the only thing I do every day is talk with my friends at Sais or Mos, and the only friends I have are Asami, Karen, and Tokashiki, so my scope of living is limited, and my friendships are limited. But, as I expected, Asami and the others were aware that it was time to study, and their sense of urgency was infectious, even to me who was still optimistic. So, on July 12th, we gathered at our usual Sizer after school to study. We talked and talked without even opening our textbooks and reference books. After returning home, I somehow opened my notebook after taking a bath. I'm sorry. I didn't study after all. As I was flipping through the pages while apologizing in my heart, my hand suddenly stopped. Tilda? In the 721 section, it said, attending cram school. Of course, I didn't write anything about attending cram school. Or rather, I had never even thought of attending cram school. I smiled bitterly, thinking that my mother must have secretly written it. She is a worrier, but it was clearly not her handwriting. I can assure you that this is not the case. Because her handwriting is super dirty. She has cataracts or something that makes it hard for her to see, and she has tendinitis or something that hurts her hands, so she can't write neatly. But this handwriting is not the same, because it is beautiful, or rather, kind of cute, with rounded characters that look like they were written by a girl. Maybe she had someone else write for her. I wonder if they want her to go to cram school. It was kind of surprising, but I guess I should have been worried. A week later, I entered a cram school where Asami's cousin's sister was a teacher. I took 2 classes for free. I was able to take 2 classes for free, and I think my deviation score went up in just 2 days because of her good teaching skills. So, I started going there from the summer vacation. Surprisingly, my mother was reluctant. It costs a lot of money. It was just a coincidence that Asami asked me to go, but when I protested that that was exactly what my mother wanted me to do, she said, "What? You don't have to go to cram school," she said. Somehow, I read the air that, the notebook was a secret, or perhaps an unspoken agreement that I was not allowed to mention it. Thanks to my grades, I was accepted to the high school of my first choice, but I was not able to fit in with the class atmosphere, so I always hung out with Asami and the other girls on weekends. But gradually, I became estranged from them. It's not because we had a fight, but because Asami started working part-time, Karen got a boyfriend, and Tokashiki's father got sick, so she had to do housework instead of her mother who went to work. Oh, but I think Asami and I had a little bit of an altercation, or maybe it was just a little bit disturbing. I got into the high school of my first choice, but Asami didn't get into the high school she wanted to go to. I got the feeling from Asami that she didn't like the fact that I got in because Asami, who introduced me to the school, didn't. But I didn't care if she said so or not. Maybe the reason he started working part-time was to make up excuses not to see me. Well, whatever the case, I'm the only one living the same daily routine, and every day I have free time. I had no choice but to do some studying once in a while, and as I was scribbling in my notebook, that notebook came into view. I picked it up with a nostalgic feeling, thinking, I remember when I had a notebook like that. The blank pages are not a trail of any kind, and the dotted, apologetic schedules make me feel empty. I didn't notice it before, but it seems that this notebook contains 3 years' worth of calendars, and this year's, or rather, the current year's, is naturally all blank, should be blank, but there are entries that I don't remember writing, in letters that are not my own. I don't remember writing it, but it is written in letters that are not my handwriting. Kiriyama confessed to me. That's what it said at the calendar place on June 4th. Kiriyama is a male classmate of mine in high school, a kind of flirtatious guy who seems to like women, but does that mean that I will be confessed to on that day? Come to think of it, I think there was some kind of future diary-like thing that happened before, but I wondered what it was all about, and as I went to school as usual on June 4th, I got a confession. Of course, it was Kiriyama. After politely declining, I thought about that mysterious notebook. But I couldn't help thinking about it, and I still didn't have any answers, so I started checking my notebook every day. The predictions of injuries, such as I'll catch a cold, I'll twist my leg, and I'll get burned, were always right on the money. Not once. Well, if you dare to look at it positively, if you know about the injury or illness beforehand, you can say that your mind and body can prepare for it, and if it's something fun to begin with, you don't need to know about it at all. It doesn't matter how much they happen, and so, as if it were somehow a matter of course, I completely believed in the contents of the notebook, whoever might be writing it, and looked at it every day before going to bed as if I were checking the weather forecast on TV or the internet, and I wrinkle my brows like never before in the past. Your mother will get pregnant. Because that's what it said. Tilda? My mom is already over 50 years old. She had her first baby when she was in her mid-30s, and when she gave birth to me, she swore out loud that she would never give birth again. I wonder if she has changed her mind after 16 years since then. Well, is there anything I can't do? I don't know. I went to the living room and looked at my mother's belly, thinking that we haven't talked about menstruation for a long time, and I noticed that there was no bulge, which was to be expected. I realized that it was only natural, since the due date was the day after tomorrow, so she couldn't be pregnant yet. I was just taking it easy, thinking that the forecast would be wrong this time, but a week later, the mother's abdomen started to show obvious signs of swelling. Wow, it's grown so much in just 1 week. I was a little excited, thinking that babies are amazing, but my father reprimanded my mother with a difficult look on his face. Being a reasonably perceptive person, I realize that he has no idea about this pregnancy. I don't even want to imagine my parents having sex, but I certainly don't get that vibe from either of them. Are you having an affair? The mother replies to the father, of course not, in an appropriate manner while watching TV. No, it's kind of cool, but I think you should be more direct with your father there. About a month later, on Sunday, the father looks at his notebook that says, Mom is going to give birth, and while I am thinking, oh no, she's going to be born after all, he cries and vows to raise the newborn as his own child. The mother seemed to be not so interested in it. The mother didn't seem to be very interested, or rather, she seemed to be more concerned about something else than I was, and was full of a sense of resignation, as if to say, I guess I'll do that. Then, just as I had predicted, the mother went into labor on the same day as predicted, and the father gently put her in the back seat of the car while I got into the passenger seat and drove carefully but roughly to a nearby hospital. The doctors, who are professionals, worked together brilliantly and carried the pregnant woman on a stretcher to an operating room or a delivery room, which is a common scene in TV dramas. They carried the pregnant woman on a stretcher into an operating room, or a delivery room, or something like that, and said something like yes, push in. The mother was breathing uniquely, as if it were the Lamaze method or something, and the father and I, who were wearing sterile clothes and watching over her, called out to her, do your best. Only a few minutes later, a new life was born from Mom's crotch. But not one person there said anything like congratulations or good job, no blessing or exertion. What is it? As if my words had set the time in the room in motion, the doctor handed the newborn object to the nurse. It was clearly not a human being. I am not talking about a deformed or premature baby, but more like a human being or a stuffed animal. It looked like Elmo, the red hairy monster from Sesame Street. His whole body was bright red and covered with hair. At first, I wondered if he was covered in blood. But the bright red fur covering his entire body was not the color of blood, but rather a color that was somehow artificially created, bright but black, and hard to describe. His face was eerily contorted, his eyes were closed, but his mouth looked like he was smiling. Even the experienced-looking doctor was frozen in place, so naturally we amateurs were even more frozen than that, but then an unexpected person spoke up. "Kill him." It was the father. His voice, which I had never heard before, and the most brutal word I had ever heard, made me cower more than when I saw Elmo, the baby my mother had given birth to. Once again, "Kill him." The next moment I thought I heard her yell, "Kill it." And the next thing I knew, the mother, who had just gotten up from her girth, slammed her clenched fist into the face of that bright red creature that the nurse was holding from above. The red creature, which had never uttered a sound before, let out a small roar and fell headfirst to the ground. From my position on the other side of the bed, I couldn't see what had happened, but the creature in the nurse's arms, which I picked up in a hurry, had a black blood-like discharge from its head, and I was probably the only one who was concerned that its head had been broken. I think I was the only one who was worried that it might have cracked its head open. My parents were kind of eager to kill it, and the doctor seemed a little excited at the prospect of encountering an unidentified creature. The nurse, who was instructed to take him away as soon as possible, as if he couldn't be hurt anymore, left with the creature wrapped in a towel. After that, I was left alone in the waiting room to talk to the adults alone, and I went home with my dad, leaving my mom, who had to stay in the hospital for a day of tests just to be sure. On the ride home, I couldn't talk to my father, who had a grim expression on his face the whole way, and I couldn't ask him about the mysterious creature. The next day, my mother was discharged from the hospital, and it was as if yesterday had never happened, or rather, the pregnancy itself had never happened, and the story of that day became somewhat of a taboo in our home, and no one talks about it. But I will never forget the line and look on my father's face that said, "Kill it." I could not forget that line and the look on his face, and I have never looked him in the eye since then, and I threw away my notebook. This is the end of this story. Thank you for listening to the end.